Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. And you guys know my custom is to welcome our guests because I feel that they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive, their time. And I want to make sure that we honor that because when someone values time, when you appreciate time, you see the beauty of time, when you learn to love and respect time, you live differently from those who don't. And so I want to thank Marie to come because I know she's spending some of that good quality stuff. The other is the journey. The journey housed who they were and made them who they are today. And so we're honored to have her come and share both of these precious commodities here with us at Threads of Enlightenment. Marie, welcome to Threads of Enlightenment.
Wonderful to be here, Ken.
It's an honor to have you. Tell the people, how do you serve mankind? I know you're a very prolific individual. The amount of things that you've done is a lot. And so tell them, how do you serve mankind, if you will?
Well, for me, it's really to help people to reach enlightenment. That's the vision that I received when I had a near death experience at 15 and I was on the other side, and where beings of light asked me to go back and to enlighten more than 500 million people. So from that day on, I asked every day, show me how I can enlighten more than 500 million people. I had no idea what that meant at that time. I just knew it was making a difference.
Right.
And so, first, I became an international criminal lawyer working with governments, and I thought that was like my journey. But later on, I really understood it was also my gift to be able to connect with energy. And
Mhm.
so I became a spiritual teacher at 30, teaching them about enlightenment and meditation. And I also understood that a lot of these people were having blockages because their environment was not supporting them. And so I studied Feng Shui with my grandmaster in Malaysia. And I became myself a Feng Shui master. And for the last 30 years, I've been helping people to help understand how energy works and how, if they have the right environment, it will be easier for them to reach enlightenment.
That is awesome. I can't wait to have this conversation because, as I mentioned to you, I read several books to understand the foundation of it and began to um, my amateur approach back in the 80s with that knowledge, how I had set up my home. And because I also believe in energy. One of our customs here, we used to go back in um, uh, our childhood, because I tell people the childhood area, and I know you mentioned that you were younger when you had your experience, is the first space by which we reside here on the planet with our family, mom and dad, and they began to um, deposit data, if you will, into us. And that data and all of that information we will assimilate and we begin to formulate our world. What was your family unit like, and how was that?
Well, I'm born in Belgium, so in a Catholic family. My mother was a teacher for primary school, really an amazing, empowering woman. She was able to work. Um, you know, um, at that time, it was not so normal for women to work, especially when they got
Yeah.
married. They would stop working, but she kept working. She had four children. I was the youngest one, and my father was a salesman for copy machines, but he had a very
Mhm.
interesting background. He had worked for the Secret Service for many years before I was born, and he also had, you know, huge trauma from the World War II, where his character sometimes was very affected by it. He was sometimes very abusive emotionally and physically. And so it was an interesting experience. Well, there was sometimes very much peaceful energy in the house through my mother, and sometimes very violent with my father. I adored them both, but thank God that I had another realm that I could go to. I had the realm of, connecting with God, seeing energy. At 7, I connect for the first time with my spiritual teacher that started teaching me meditation. And
Mhm.
so this he would come and visions and dreams to me, And so from 7 years old, I was meditating. And I think that really
Wow.
saved me, going through this very difficult childhood, being on the edge because of my
Yeah.
father never
Yeah.
knew how he would burst out in anger, or what was the next episode that happened from his PTSD. Um, but at the same time, it was also a man that wanted me to study a lot. So
Yeah.
he believed in female leadership. So, I did a lot of extra curriculum activities and, in the scouts, in music and dance and singing. So I was always outside the house, perhaps also
Mm.
an escape, to be honest,
Yeah.
to just not be at home. Um, and so that's kind of my childhood. Very active child, at the same time, very meditative, intuitive child. And yeah, that's kind of a nutshell, I think.
And that's a powerful imagery that you just gave to us, Marie, because you're dealing with some intense emotional movement from mom and dad in the sense of where you're there within that cauldron, if you will. And here's this a young girl who is activating and getting in touch with her spiritual self at such a young age, and to become a practitioner of meditation at 7 years old is extremely just impressive in a way that such a young individual, because I didn't start meditation or became aware of it until it was in my 20s, and where I really started utilizing it. I did it in martial arts a little here and there or whatever, but not becoming a practitioner. There's a difference between when you're just dabbling and becoming a practitioner. But you were becoming a practitioner at 7 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, it was my way out, I think, to, keep believing in the goodness of myself, finding myself, keep loving myself, not trying to take things so personal. I think that has helped me to go through this difficult time. And I think a lot changed, of course, when I had a near death experience after run over by a truck at 15. I was even after that, because then a lot of my memory loss happened. And I would even go deeper in meditation at 15. It was my way to keep my brain going, to be honest,
Yeah,
because I couldn't memorize things anymore. I had short term memory problems, quite huge. And so before I would study, I would meditate. I would like ask my soul to retain the information. And then
yeah,
before going to exams, I would go in meditation the first 10 minutes when I was sitting in the exam room, and I just would receive information, and I would start writing. And perhaps that's some people call it automatic writing. I would just keep writing, but I didn't even recall what I was writing. So, but
hmm,
apparently, I got through it, and it started improving more and more as I was meditating, because I connected. I think I somehow put my neural pathways differently together,
yeah,
instead of using my normal left brain skills. I think I started opening up to my right brain skills, and created new neural pathways to find a way to live in a normal life.
yeah, because that's what meditation does. And
Yeah.
so you started at such a young age, and then you began more as you said, after your accident at 15, and how that changed your life. And then as you began to take meditation to a deeper level, you began to rewire your belief system and your mind and so forth and all the different pathways. So as this young girl is a practitioner of one of the most powerful ways by which one can learn how to become the master of self, if you will, meditation. As you are moving through that, you've gone through the accident. Now that's a traumatic situation right there, Marie. How did this young 15-year-old girl move from laying in a hospital bed to begin to taking her first steps and moving What was that journey like, that period right there? Uh,
Well, as I said, I start asking, how can I be of service, right? So I had no idea what that really meant at that time. But,
mhm,
I was living in a church community, so I would start helping out in the church. I would be more active as a youth leader in scouts. I would start looking if I could help the sick people in the community when they had their days together. So anything I could find, even in
mhm,
school, anything I could find to be of service in some way. Um, I just had no idea how that really worked. And then when I was 18, I thought, like, you know what, if I really want to reach millions of people, I mean, in today's world, I would probably start up a
yeah.
TikTok account or a podcast, right, as a
Yeah.
young age. But at that time, I was like, if I would work with United Nations or work with governments, that probably would help, to reach, some form of service. And so I became a lawyer. I did international law. Then I also added criminology because I felt like if I understand the people that are the worst in life, my level of
Mhm,
compassion would grow because that was really
yeah.
important to me. After I was 15, I knew that I had to work on my compassion um, because before I was 15 I had a very difficult relationship with my father, but after 15 I think he came to some insights that he almost lost his daughter. It kind of was a revelation time for him, I think, and so our
Mhm,
relationship improved definitely, but still, his emotional abuse was very intense. um, and so I thought, like, if I would understand better about the psychology, the psychiatry, because that's all things you have to study when you do criminology, um, that would be helpful for me to deal with him. And so, and to have more compassion for even the people that do the worst things in life. And
yeah.
so that has been helpful for me. But then my father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer when I was like the last 6 months of my studies before I was finalizing my college, my university. And then when the day that I graduated, we had to start taking care of him full time for 6 months. And I knew that I needed in the 6 months to really find a way to forgive him.
Yeah.
Because, I was, even if I already had a lot more compassion, I had no idea what was really going on with him. I mean, he didn't tell really what has happened in the war. I knew there had been some torture that he went through in the Nazi camps when he was picked up as a fighter, a soldier, but I had no idea really. And so I saw my father deteriorating, and so I really had to grow my compassion. And
Yeah.
then I remember the week before he died, he thought I was the priest. So he was like in an illusion, and he thought I was the priest, and he started telling and confessing all the things he had done in his life. And so that was really an eye opener. He told me what happened in the war camps, but then also he told me how he abused a lot of women in his life, sexually abused them, not me personally, but, other people.
Yeah.
And so he was like, for hours telling me like his whole life. And I was listening from a perspective that I was the observer, and I would just really be trying to understand and not be his daughter. And
Mhm,
so I felt after he told me all this, I felt I had like a week. My intuition said it has a week for me to forgive him for what he had done to me. I understood now better him. So that was
yeah.
a plus point. But, that was at the same time, I heard so much bad things in his life. And so, but the night before he died, I was able to forgive him. Like literally, I was able to forgive him from myself. But also, I told him as a representation of all the women that he um, did hurt, I would forgive him in name of all these women. And so I could see the shift that happened in my father's field and body, and I think he found peace at the moment he died. I think that was probably the most crucial point in my life. And after that, I really had found compassion because I was able to forgive the man I hated the most.
Yeah. Wow, that's a powerful story, Marie, that you and some horrific situation as far as, but in a way it was a blessing that you got a chance to hear uh, his life, if you
Yeah.
will, that was not privy to you before, and you began to be exposed. The when that you said that when you made that confession to him on behalf of all the women and he got his peace, how did you receive your forgiveness? How did it, what happened to you when you felt as if you had released him or you had forgiven him? What happened to you at that moment?
Well, I think what happened when I recall that moment, of course, I felt myself finally at peace, right, with
Yeah,
understanding the situation, but at the same time feeling like if I can forgive the person that hurt me the most in my life, and I mean, there's a lot of things I don't talk yet about, but the whole point was, I felt like I could have the compassion for everyone in my life, for everyone I
yeah,
would ever meet. And so it's also like a year and a half later then that I had an enlightenment experience where I totally become one with the universe. And I always say I would not have been able to get to that point if I did not forgive the man that I hated the most. And so I think it gave me the basic for the enlightenment experience I would have later on. And also my ability to love myself. I think that changed
hmm,
completely. I loved myself at that moment for the first time, probably. And
yeah,
because I was able to forgive him, at the same time, I was able to forgive myself for all the hate that I had. But I also was able from that moment on to love more. And it's still
yeah,
one of my mantras in the morning when I wake up is like I ask myself, how can I love more today?
yeah. That is a powerful. I love your life in the sense of how you directed it. It was a purposeful approach to your living once you received the instruction to serve, and how that was your guiding, your North Star, moving you through your decision process as you're moving lawyer, criminal law, all the different things, because you wanted to understand the human psyche,
Sorry.
if you will. Um, bless you, from the dark side. You wanted to understand that, and if you can understand that, you can understand those that are walking around with a lighter burden, if you will. And as you get that experience, this is your second um, or maybe your third experience where you are there as far as enlightened experience. How did that come about? How did your day start? Because this girl is practicing meditation, and I try, Marie, to tell people how powerful meditation is. And I have seen some uh, on you cannot. Uh, I did martial arts, and so I saw from demonstration with martial arts some of the things that the body and mind, when partnered correctly,
Yeah.
can achieve. And so I try to educate people about the power of meditation. It's just not something that people mention it as power. So when this young girl is dealing with power and open to the spiritual realm, explain to us, walk us through that day when you had that impactful enlightenment that caused you to move in even stronger in your direction that you wanted to go.
Yeah. Well, um, I know it's exactly the day unfolding. Um, I was asked by a woman, a friend of mine, to go to a Tibetan bowl healing, and she had set up an experience for that. set up a session with me. And I came into this huge place, and it was a Tibetan healer. And I never heard of this technique, so that was very new to me. And he had all these Tibetan balls, but he also had this huge gong. And I still don't even remember how they got that gong into that space because it was so huge. And he said there's only 14 gongs like this in the world. And it was in Belgium, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and this was a gong that sounded the Om sound. So when you would hit the gong, it would take 15 minutes before the gong would make noise because it was that big. And then the Om sound would come. And he said, but I almost never use it because nobody's ready for it. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, yeah, I would love to hear that one. So I lay down and he put all these balls on me, around me, and started working with the balls. And I just, at a certain moment, thought like I was so relaxed. And then I didn't hear him close to me anymore, but he apparently went to the gong and hit the gong. And for 15 minutes, nothing happened. But then after 15 minutes, this Om sound started coming over my
Mm-hmm.
body like waves of Om. And
Yeah.
so I left my body. I literally just again left my body, went to like all these dimensions. Like think if you would like take an airplane and you would go to the clouds and you would go more to the clouds and more to the clouds, like
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
so then I came to a place where it was like in the universe the Om sound was created. It was like all these beings of light that create the Om sound. And they said, no, you have to continue. And I went to a place where the light was created, and then there was beyond the light, and there was the void, there was darkness, there was space. And then I heard this big, I cannot explain it differently than a big bang, a big explosion of sound. And then after that, I saw how things were created. It was like I saw galaxies were created, but I was the galaxy. I saw universes being created. I was universe. I saw planets and stars and everything created. But at the same time, I was each one of them. And I saw the earth being created, and I was the earth. I saw souls being created. I was every soul till I came back into my body. Um, and I remember opening my eyes, and I thought I was gone 15 minutes. It's kind of that's how my time lineage
Yeah.
experience was. But apparently, I had been 2 hours out of my body, and he said I couldn't even touch your body anymore. Your body was so vibrating. I couldn't touch it. I couldn't be in the neighborhood. And I had been snoring apparently for 2 hours. So that was
Yeah.
the,
Wow.
the physical experience.
Yeah.
But I remember when I came home, I was like, what was that? Right? And so I knew my life had changed completely. And like the next day, I had to go back on Monday to be a lawyer,
Yeah.
working for the government. But I
Yeah.
remember being in the train and looking at everybody and just knowing I was them and they were me, and the
Yeah.
level of compassion that I never had, that level of compassion, that level of love as that moment. And I record that very strongly what my experience was going into my job and seeing that oneness experience, no like, oh, they're created and I'm created, but I just could see the co-creation and the connection. Um, and it's only like a year and a half later that I met, through dreams. I saw this other woman in my dreams, and I found her through friends. I was describing, I see this woman in my dreams, and then I found her, and I came into her house, and she was an enlightened one and a
Mm-hmm.
very old lady that was living in the same city. And she told me like that day, and she knew exactly the day. And she said, "What happened?" And I said, so I explained to her, and she said, "That's it." And I said, "What is it?" She said, "That's enlightenment." And I was like, "Oh," because there were no books for me accessible to
Yeah.
read about it,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
um, that was like interesting experience, but I was from that moment on totally changed. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you, being changed and seeing the compassion and seeing the connectiveness as we are all connected and we are all one, as you began to engage with others? You said you saw yourself looking at those everyone on the subway, and you began to see that. How was your conversation, Marie, with others as you were talking with them versus just being the observer? When you engaged, what was that
Yeah.
engagement like?
Well, it's really interesting, the question you asked me, because it's like, because I was such in unity, I could understand their soul. Like it was like
Hmm.
understand, like even looking at people or talking to people, I just could like see. I had like access to where they came
Yeah,
from, not just in this lifetime, but like their soul journey. I, at the same time, I could like see their evolution. Like I could see like the involution and evolution of that soul. And still today, when I work with people personally, it's like there's through that love connection. Yeah. It's
yeah,
like I can see and understand where they're from, who they are, and where they're going. It's like the perception of who they are is completely different. And whoever they have been and whoever they are now, there's just this, I don't know, I cannot explain anything else than total love for them, total love for their
yeah,
soul.
yeah. That's great. Um, we wish that all would have that experience so that we would bring some peace into this madness of our thinking and using differences of color and religion and all these different things to separate us when we are one. It's really something. So here you are, and you had the change of life, and that is a powerful, um, just powerful stuff. You'd have to be there. You can't, there's some things in life you just can't explain. It's something you just have to experience. And so from that experience, you saw the revelation of all, one and one. As you're moving and it's becoming in the distance, if you will, there's some time in between that experience as you're moving forward in your life. Um, where did it take you, that experience, as you're moving further away from it? Where did it take you as you began to move through your life?
Well, I was still a lawyer working for governments.
Yeah.
And so I
Mhm.
was, what had changed is that because I was creating law systems and new laws for the
Mhm.
government and, digitalizing the law systems. I was very good in coding also. And
Yeah.
it was like I infused, like I cannot say it differently. It was like I was infusing the law and everything I was doing with that light of the universe. But after I finalized some major projects, I became pregnant from my first child. And so I
Mhm.
took a sabbatical because I was like, I need to really experience that as being a mother, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being a lawyer. So I became a mother. And after my giving birth and taking care of my child for a while, I decided not to go back to being a lawyer. And I kept receiving, I need to start a spiritual center. But you have to understand, that doesn't exist in my country at that time.
Yeah.
But I just knew it was time for me to teach, to consult. And as I was pregnant, I started attracting a lot of people that asked for my support, guidance. People just were looking and finding me. I don't know even how it all happened. One said to another, Marie has this ability to understand, to see the soul, to see what is going on with you. I've always had this clairvoyant aspect to me, but and seeing energy was something from my childhood on. But I would say after my enlightenment experience, there was just such a clarity of what was going on in the soul of people. And
Yeah.
so I started a spiritual center where I was, people would come for advice, and people start asking, how do you do this? How do you meditate? So how do you, get to that enlightenment experience? And literally, that's how I started teaching meditation. The meditations I learned when I was 7 till I was
Yeah.
like when I was 15 and beyond, like everything that I learned, I was just putting it into what we call the inner diamond system. And Um, and before I knew it, I was having thousands of people coming to my seminars and retreats in Belgium and Holland, some countries around. And I was like, I didn't really plan this, how that was going to unfold. It was
Yeah.
just like people were looking for me or finding me. And that is when then at a certain point I felt they were missing out on, they would come to me and I would see their breakthrough, but then they would go home and the place where their soul is living, not just in their
Hmm.
body, but in their home around them, I could see that they were missing out on manifesting that breakthrough, right? Integrating
Yeah.
that breakthrough. And that's where I opened up to something I already knew when I was 15 to work with Feng Shui. Um, but then I started really studying that and then implementing that part of, I said, if you want to reach enlightenment, your home needs to be a place where you can reach enlightenment.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine, um, and when I grew up, and he was a teacher, and he said to me, when you go into someone's house, it is a reflection of their inside.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into some homes. I'll never forget that. And the example that he used, that he gave to me, was very profound. He said, when Jesus died, because we grew up in church, he took the time to fold the wrapping that he had around him. He folded it, and because he said he took the time because he was, it's a representation of the individual. But as a Jewish person, you would know some of that. There's some really powerful insight other than that that is in that, when he folded that napkin of his. But you're absolutely right. The house is what's inside of the person. And when you see chaos, disorder, that's what's there. And because they're comfortable there, that's why that house looks like that. And so, as you had this revelation about studying feng shui, and you said you had that at an early age, um, and you knew that that was a part of it because we are energy, as your experience showed you, and that when we put our energy in order, the flow of the energy will manifest faster. As you began to study this thing and you had your first client, if you will, how did that come about and what was the result for the information? Because you're sending them, you're training them, then you're sending them home, all kinds of craziness happening there. When did you begin to do your studies and you saw the data as to what results were bringing in? Do you remember your first one and the results that it brought in?
Um, Well, I would say the first one was myself, of course, right? So when I was
Yeah, yeah,
15, and I was talking to my spiritual mentor and asking, what did I do wrong? Why did I have this accident? And he said laughingly, you have bad feng shui. And so I understood that I was not in a location that was strong enough for my soul. And so I was like in the north side of the house. There was no sunlight coming in. And there was just no good vibration. So I moved to the west side where there's a lot of sunlight coming in, and my life totally shifted. I changed the colors, I changed the images around me, and so I started seeing like the impact of changing the environment. And of course, I practiced some of the basic things I knew till I was like 31 when I really wanted to study with that information. And then the first book in Dutch, because I spoke Dutch at that time, right,
yeah,
came out in the bookstores. And that's when I connected in with grandmasters. I went to a conference in London, and I knew exactly which grandmaster I wanted to study with, but he did not accept students till like, a few months later. I was through very interesting coincidences. And dreams that I need to contact him. I started working with my grandmaster in Malaysia. And so for me, it was just like such an old information that I knew. It was like I was
yeah.
listening to all this information, and for me, it was like, oh, I know this, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I had past lives in the Chinese culture, or it's because of my enlightened experience that I just understood energy, right? It was just like I
Yeah.
understood the mathematical formulas behind it. I was very good at math, so that was helpful, but I was just like, it made all sense to me. And um, the first things I did, I started really teaching it. It was not so much implementing it with students like in their houses. I would implement it myself, first of all, and
Mm-hmm.
then I would start teaching some information connected with spirituality, and like which direction to face when you're meditating is based on your birthday. So I was talking about that. um, Certain colors that would really work for them to have surrounding them, what to avoid, so certain things I was explaining. I was more teaching at first. And I do remember my first major client, who was somebody who was very well known in my country. He was very interesting. He was a casino owner. He owned like all the casinos of
Mm-hmm.
our little country, and his health was really bad. And so the holistic doctor said, you need to work with Marie, like you need to learn to meditate. But I knew when I was talking to him, I was like, his environment's probably all wrong. And
Yeah.
so I came into his house, and the first thing, and I still remember that because you're saying what is outside of you is inside of you. And I say it's like everything that's around you is like a three-dimensional vision board that
Yeah.
reflects what is subconsciously going on with you. And the first thing I came in to his house was a huge statue of a blind man. And I still remember that. It was huge. He'd paid like $1 million for it, by the way. And I was like, it was
Wow.
very well known, very famous. And I was like, oh my God, he is blind. Like, and I told him, you're
Yeah.
blind to your loved ones. You're blind to your children. You're blind to your wife. You're blind to all the greatness that you have, your wealth. You don't do anything with it. And so we moved that away. He was very upset with it, but I insisted. And then, like suddenly, his eyes opened up, like to the beauty of
Yeah.
life again, right?
Yeah.
He sold his casinos, set up a whole bunch of hotels, and I did all the hotels. So
Yeah.
it was really interesting. It was like, I would never forget that because it was like the first real consultation I did
Yeah.
was immediately somebody that was making a huge impact really on society. It was a very interviewed personality and so his shift, everybody was talking about it. And so, but before it was like I saw so many people shifting because they were implementing what I was teaching them. And then I started
Yeah.
understanding I needed to talk more about that. And then I finalized my master certification, and my master gave me the permission to start teaching. And from that moment on, it always was the both parts, the inner diamond, as they call it, to really
Mm-hmm.
find that enlightenment, but also to create an enlightened home through Feng
Yeah.
Shui.
It. Yeah. The combination, the teamwork of both the home and because it is where you reside most of the time, and that energy is constantly moving, and there's blockage within that. It is everything that is there, and so you have to learn all of the different arrangements of furniture, what not to have, colors, all those different things, so that you would have that flow within your home, and which will manifest within you, and you're able to pass through things, and it changes. I can tell you it does. So you had a chance to see the impact of the data, as you said that you had practiced on your own, and then you were able to implement it. And this person, many people began to see and whisper about what took place and the change in the individual. As you are moving through and you're incorporating this aspect in your enlightenment approach, um, as that is moving, how was Marie doing in that with all that is happening around her? How was she handling herself? What was it? What was happening in you as you were doing all of this stuff?
Well, at the same time, I was having a young family, right?
Yeah.
Seeing so many people, I was a full schedule, from morning till evening, weekends. I was, in such a drive of passion, and I saw the results of people's life changing. And it was
Hmm.
just such a joy, I have to be honest, even if it was physically quite intense, because I was young, I could handle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was such a joy. I was like, I was like, yeah, that's what I'm here for. Like, that is what
Yeah.
I'm connecting. But at the same time, having a young family um, was really good because it grounded me. So because
Hmm.
like all these people that just are so devotional towards you, what I didn't like, that's the part I never liked about being a
Yeah.
teacher, that people like suddenly become your followers. Um, and but at the same time, I came home and I had to, like, sometimes I had the most amazing um, events or seminars, and I came home and then my
Yeah.
son has diarrhea and I have to clean up his poop the whole night. So I mean, it just really grounded me to have a
Yeah.
wonderful husband supporting me and doing what I wanted to do, or not what I wanted, what I was supposed to do. That was like my purpose,
Yeah.
my mission. And at the same time to be grounded, right? So at a certain point, I felt that very clearly I had reached the boundaries of my country. And
Hmm.
because I was every day asking, show me how to reach millions of people. So I knew that, this is before internet, right? With internet, I would go
Yeah. Yeah.
beyond my boundaries, but of my country. But at that time, and I just kept seeing my spiritual master telling I need to go to America. So I started going to America just on holidays. And then I met by coincidence people that were attracted to talk to me. And I started setting up my first seminar. And I started going back and forth between Belgium and California teaching, and for a couple of years, till I was like, I really got one morning waking up, very clearly the voice of my master telling, you have to be here in 3 weeks. So I called my husband and I said, start packing, we're moving in 3 weeks. Now you have to understand, this is before, you know before 9/11, so it was a little bit easier at that time to um,
Yeah.
to immigrate into America. And 3 weeks later, literally with 6 bags and my youngest son, because my oldest son decided to stay in Belgium because he was already at that time he was the son of my husband. So, but I took care of him. So, but it was not my physical son. So he decided to stay in Belgium and continue his studies there. He was already, is 18 at the time. And so I started again from zero, right here in
Yeah.
America. I mean, I already had, like, let's say 200 students, but I had to
Hmm.
start again building up. And yeah, because I jumped. I felt it was, if I want to reach millions of people, that's what I need to do. So,
Yeah. I had a friend of mine, Marie, that told us that told me, she said, there's a point where the gift uses you.
yeah.
And I remember when she said that to me, I was like, it took me a little while for it to hit in, because then I
So
realized,
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
it
like
is
you're in
so
such a
true.
surrender. Like, I'm such a
Yeah,
surrender to my purpose that
yeah,
when I get a call, like, 10 years later, I got a call to go back to Europe. That's what I did. Now, I just got a call last year to come back to the US. I'm actually living in the US again. And I just follow the calling. It's like
yeah,
my life is not mine. Of course,
yeah,
in a way, it is. I mean, on a personal level, right? To be with the
yeah, yeah,
person that I am and to be with my children. I mean, while I have a daughter that is born in the US. Um, but ultimately, my life is not mine. My life is my mission, and my mission has priority.
yeah. And like I said, she mentioned that, and then you realize what wisdom she had uttered, and you have to come to a place where you surrender to that so it can use you, because most of the times when we wrestle with it, we find ourselves stagnated, and there's this puddle of uh, non-moving water and energy, as they say. And when you
Yeah.
have non-moving water, there are all kinds of critters that will end up in that situation. You find yourself, lost and stagnant, and that's where death comes in as far as growth. I tell people that there's a couple of things that are the enemy of personal development. Perfection. That's the biggest one. There is no such thing. It's one. What it is surrendering at every moment.
Yeah.
That's what it calls for, and that's what it demands. Surrendering at every moment. As you learn to surrender, go ahead. Go ahead. You're
You
about to
know,
say
I
something.
that's such a beautiful. Never heard that been said. Surrendering at every moment. I always say I'm in total surrender, but that's actually what it is, right? You're surrendering in every
Yeah,
moment. I love that. I will remember that quote. Yeah.
you can use it anytime because it is what I had learned in my life. I remember I had an incident that happened in one of my family, and I was really upset and whatever. And I'm driving my bike one morning, and the thought came is to me as to why am I upset? Why am I feeling disheveled and looking disheveled as a result of this? I was up all night, and it says this is you have to learn to live in the present, and meaning that you have to learn to surrender in the present. That's when it hit me that in every moment one surrenders. In a conversation with your husband, in a conversation with you have this exchange of surrendering, and we don't see it as that, but it is, and that's how one moves in a journey. So here you are, you've been obedient, and there's a proverbs that says obedience is always better than sacrifice. And so you have been obedient to your gift and your calling, and you have seen much, Marie. You've seen much. How do you feel presently with the assignments that you was given, and what you have done with the impact with what you have learned today as we are having this conversation? How does Marie feel with that assignment, looking at it and looking at her life today?
You know, I see you're living so much in the present. I don't really look so much back into that. It's like every moment was so full of
Yeah,
passionate energy and joyful sharing that, you know, when I look back at it, of course, there's a level of completion, a level of accomplishment, perhaps is a better word. But it's not an accomplishment like from, oh, wow, I've done that. It's not an ego achievement, right?
yeah, yeah,
So it's just like, there's just this, you know, thread of joy that
yeah,
that I've created, and it's still some wonder, you know, like people text me or people leave me messages or DM me now with Instagram, and I see these messages, and I'm like, each time when you hear you have made a difference in people's life, there's this experience of joy, you know, and
yeah,
it's not satisfaction because there's nothing to satisfy anymore, right? When you there's that satisfaction has left when you reach enlightenment because you don't look for satisfaction anymore. But
yeah,
there's just this moment of joy, right?
yeah,
That keeps you going also, right? And I'm like, okay, this is good, this is nice, and I'm happy for them. Um, am I happy for myself? No, that I don't need to be happy for myself. I'm fulfilled for sure. Um, but it definitely helps me to um, you know, to keep going, yeah, to keep
yeah,
um, thinking more, right? More in the
yeah,
sense how I can love more, how can I reach more, how can I impact more from that perspective. So um, this year, when I was turning 60 and I was 30 years doing this work, um, I woke up on my 60th birthday and I very clearly, you have to go mainstream. So I feel like I've worked and I've become one of the top transformational speakers. I've been in The Secret that has reached more than 500 million
Yeah.
people. I'm on the top of my field in, reaching millions of people. Um, but they're still in the self-help. They're still in the spiritual world. And it felt to me like this, from now on, I need to work on the mainstream. And that's why I brought my book out, Feng Shui Your Life. Um, I created an app so it's much easier for people to work with Feng Shui. And, going mainstream with that information, like a television show that comes up, Feng Shui Your Life, for mainstreaming television platform. Um, and it's like also speaking to radio shows from last week. It was like I was speaking for Orthodox Jewish radio show to a conservative Republican radio show on feng shui, because a lot of
Yeah.
these people are not ready to talk about enlightenment for sure, but they're ready to talk about energy. And so the
Yeah.
one that is the most accessible for them is not always to focus on energy in themselves. That's a little bit too hard still, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
But to look at the energy around them. Oh, that's something
Yeah.
they can do. And I remember, many years ago, my spiritual master told me, like, you need to be as visible as possible, but you have to go under the radar. And,
Yeah.
some of your information you're talking about, of course, about enlightenment, I can talk to you about this kind and to your audience. That's fine.
Yeah.
But, I'm not going to talk to that publicly, when they're asked, yes, of course, but that's not what I want to focus on. So using feng shui to help people to change their energy and knowing that because they change outside of them, they will inside have changes because,
Yeah.
it's a subconscious reaction. It's through the mirror neurons in our brain, whatever is around us will affect us and mirror back in ourselves. And if I can change that to the mainstream, then I'm just, that's the next level, I think, of
Yeah.
enlightenment, because reaching 500 million people, okay, I've done that through The Secret, but enlightening 500 million people, that's another game. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I see myself the next 30 years doing just that.
Yeah. There are two types of people that you will affect, and I tell people that you will have the general public, if you will. And again, I use the analogy because I grew up in church, and Jesus spoke to the general public different than he spoke to his disciples. The disciples, these guys, he was giving a little more information. And so you could use the feng shui will bring them in, and then there are those within that coming in there that will ask you those questions that will waken them up, if you will,
Yeah,
to the spiritual. They came in knowing, and it was the door by which they can come in
correct.
from the masses. And then when you get them before you, that's where the disciples come, and that's where you'll be able to meet, because he just
Yeah.
needed 12, Marie. You
It
may
is,
just
it's,
need
it's
one
so
more.
true. It's a portal, right? And I know that feng
Yeah,
shui is a portal, but then they go
yeah,
to the app, the My Diamond app that is available for free. There's
yeah,
already, the first meditation that I've ever learned when I was 7 that I still practice, and millions of people are practicing that meditation I received. And so many people start then going there because, and when they start studying feng shui with me, we always add meditation to it, to
yeah.
just even visualizing or meditating with your home. So, and people
Hmm.
are like going into it, I bring them down that journey
Yeah,
by using feng shui, and then they go to the inner diamond feng shui, as
yeah,
I call it. And then, I'm actually preparing them to go to the next level of awareness
yeah.
um,
Hmm.
through their home, right? Because
Yeah,
it's like setting up your home can help you for that. And I said, like, people are not able to go to the east to perhaps find the masters, but they
yeah,
can find
yeah,
the master within themselves by creating the home that allows that frequency, and because of that, they will find that inner temple.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole focus. So it's going outside to bring them inside. Um,
Yes.
but I see that this is, I think, the major way to bring mainstream, um, I'm not saying America, but mainstream the world. And I've seen this over
Yeah.
and over again. People that start with feng shui, then they see that their families start changing, that then they're starting meditating, their families start meditating. So it's
Hmm.
like it's they don't know it, but there is a I would say a process to the madness, as we call it.
Yeah, it is a I think it's a deliberate way to approach it, and it's a smart way and very effective. Because first you're dealing with the house, you're dealing with it on their terms, and as they come closer and closer to you, they're now going to begin to deal on a different term. And you are doing it perfectly. You're able
Thank
to,
you.
and those that are into uh, the feng shui of the house, they would eventually want to incorporate meditation because feng shui is a part of meditation, you
Yeah.
know, and it is for that home, your sanctuary, if you will, and that energy is also a part of meditation that this young girl had learned at 7 years old when she started becoming a practitioner. And so it is a part of the whole thing. And so I think it's brilliant, actually, in how you are bringing them and walking them hand by hand and leading them into a place where they can become enlightened. It's powerful stuff, Marie. It's 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 efficient in its approach, if you will. Very efficient. I like it. So I know that you have all of the apps, you have all of these things, and you talk about how you're leading and continuing your assignment as and guys, I'm going to provide everything for you to reach her. It's important that you do. And the house is so important. Um, I'll tell you guys a secret. When I began to incorporate it into my home, I had 4 boys and they have friends. I was a single dad, and my house was full of kids and boys, and they were all over the place. And when I began to incorporate feng shui into my home, it changed everything. The energy it shifted. My sons and their friends became calmer. Um, Everything changed in my house. From me reading some books, learning the principles, walking with the book, Marie, and flipping the page in every one of my room, and they had all the different diagrams, and I would be moving in every one of my rooms, and the colors I painted, I changed everything, and my house changed along with it with my kids,
Beautiful. Thank you
and
for
so
sharing that.
I
That's
watched it. I
impressive.
I watched it happen. That's why I wanted them to know. I want the listeners to know it actually worked in my house, and I saw it. And so, what Marie is inviting you to is order. It starts in your home. And I watched it personally, and it is very effective. And so I'm going to provide everything for you guys to get access to her so that you can learn from her. She has done much and she continues to do much. And I need you guys to get into her space. Buy the books. All of you that are listening, buy the books. It will change. Trust me. And it will change your life. I'm telling you, I saw it did with mine, with my kids. If you could understand a house, a single dad with boys, and the whole neighborhood was in my house, and yet a rearranging of my things and the colors and all that changed every one of those children coming into that space. And they even talk about it today, they're grown men. So, Maria, I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads
Thank
of
you so
Enlightenment.
much,
This has
Ken,
been a
for a
good
lovely
stuff.
conversation, and thank you for the work that you do in the world, because you really create threads of enlightenment in people's hearts. Thank you for that.
Thank you.